How would you describe what it's like to play a Big 12 game every 3 or 4 days for 2 months?
Yeah, obviously the league is terrific. It's always good, but what you're seeing right now is every team is playing well, and there's nobody that like you can look at and say, hey, this is a team that might be at the bottom of the league. So that's challenge number one. The second thing is there's a very defensive-minded mentality with the majority of the teams. It's physical, it's tough, it's the pace of play isn't necessarily the fastest, but that's not because teams aren't trying to push. It's because they're really good defensively. It's just to get a rebound, it's a grind. It's physical. So a big part of it for us and for others is mentally that you bring everything you can on game night, you bring your best, you focus on that next game to win the next game, and then you quickly turn the page after that game, and that's going to be so important. And that's the mental challenge of the Big 12 Conference is that there's so many good teams, and not in any leagues that there's a quote-unquote night off, but in our league, everybody's good, everybody's playing good, everybody's physical, everyone defends. And so you need to know that going in, and you need to prepare and practice accordingly.
I think the defensive aspect has probably changed from 10 years ago when you were an assistant. Do you think that makes the mental part harder? Because wins and losses are one thing, but if you're grinding out a basket 65 possessions a game, is that harder for guys because they want to score?
Yeah, absolutely. I think how your team's personality and what the strengths of your team are, and what's your identity. Like for us, we built the identity of ball pressure and rebounding effort and ball toughness, knowing that at the start of the year that would serve us well, but also feeling like as the year went on how important that was going to be, because there's going to be games in this league where there's probably going to be some games people need to win in the 40s, 50s. That's going to happen because people defend so well. It is so physical. It is aggressive. So it's definitely different than what it was, to your point, 10 years ago, where probably half the teams were really efficient, pace offensively, getting up and down and scoring. And now, I think the defense has a lot more to do with the pace of play even than the offense, because you can find ways to disrupt people. You can find ways through different presses and pressure in the basketball to do that. So I think we're fortunate based on the strengths of our team and how we built our group, but you're going to have to really have, to your point with the offense, no ego. Everybody's kind of got to start with the stop and then play offense off their defense, and we're certainly no different.
So, going forward now with Texas Tech, I don't know how much you've seen them, but what do you have to do to beat them?
Well, as we just talked about, you talk about really good defense, and they're at the top of the league in a lot of the categories. So defensively, they play a lot of like-sized guys, 6'6" to 6'8". They switch so many actions, on-ball screens, handoffs. And so you've got to be offensively, you have to be stubborn, tough. You have to be willing to play through the possession, knowing they're trying to disrupt you. And you've got to keep cutting, keep screening, keep the ball moving. You can't get caught up in dribbling and standing. For us defensively, it's still about setting the tone. It's about turning our opponent over. It's about getting points off our turnovers, and second chance points with our rebounding effort. So it's a game where you got to find the margins and say we got to get +4 in this area, +3 in that area. And those are effort-based things for us. It comes down to rebounding. It comes down to turning people over and scoring off your turnovers. It comes down to toughness with the ball. So what we're going to have to do is all those same things. I know it's always monotonous, but I felt like if we were a little tougher with the basketball, if we win the rebounding battle, if we had just a little more ball pressure, we'd have put ourselves in position to win our game on Saturday. So it's going to just get back to those are the things that will dictate winning and losing. It's done that for us so far, so we're going to keep that same formula.
At what point though, TJ, does and I bought into your defensive stuff because of you, Mr. Defense over here, who hammers it into me. But I still think offense is more important. But at what point does your list there say if we'd have made 3 more three-point baskets, for example?
Yeah, and so that's something that obviously when you just look at the raw statistics at the end of the game, we had that game where you're 1 for 14. So you say, it'd be easy to, well, if we would have made 4, we would have won the game. That's not exactly how it works. But at the same time, against one of the better defenses in America, we got 27 foul shots. We had 44 points at the rim, which my guess would be, I haven't looked it up, but I would be surprised if anybody's had that many points at the rim against them last year or this year. And so we've got to just play offense with toughness and take what presents itself, take, like the plays that show up. And the guys on our team that are tasked with, shooting 3-point shots, when those opportunities present themselves in the realm of our offense, they need to knock them down with confidence. So I'll never be a coach that looks at it and says it's a makes and miss. I know they say that in the NBA. It's a makes or miss league. To me, it's all mentality based. And if our mentality in certain areas would have been a little more stubborn, we would have won. At the same time, I get it. Like, if you make a lot of threes, you have a lot more margin to not be quite as good in those other areas. Where we're really trying to focus our efforts and energy is on like the doable, effort-based energy things. I'm more of a believer if you're the more aggressive team, those threes present themselves and you make them with confidence, than I am someone who looks at it like, hey, let's just shoot more threes so we make more.
Going off defense for a moment, I remember on media day, rebounding was the number 2 thing you mentioned, and I guess against such an elite rebounding team like Baylor, particularly offensive rebound, if you guys to hold your own and really hold an edge there most of the game, what does that say about where you're at and what you're doing, and also what do you need to do a little bit better to maybe just get that little bit more of an edge?
Yeah, I think for the majority of the game, we were the more physical team on the glass. Like we had, we were offensive rebounding early. That's how we were, generating offense, and we were going with aggression. And to get that little bit better, we've got to maintain it for 40 minutes because, to your point, it was something that felt like we had an edge on for probably the first 30 to 32 minutes, and maybe not as much late. So what we're really emphasizing with our guys is getting better as the game goes on, getting better as the possession goes on. Offensively, that means staying the course, being stubborn, but it means offensive rebound, it means defensive rebounding. So we know that that's an effort-based thing, and that's something that we can continue to thrive at. So I think it's more about just doing it every single time.
And I know we'd ask you about Tristan, how he's done, particularly the last 2 games after the Baylor game, but how does he find a little bit more consistency? Does it start with his activity on the boards because he's so good and athletic, especially in the offensive end?
Yeah, my opinion is if you watch Tristan when the game starts and you watch his rebounding energy, then you'll know how the game's going to go for him that night. We've seen those games, and again, Saturday was one where he starts out and that's how we score, like he's on the offensive glass and then he's cutting hard. So I would say for Tristan to continue to climb and play at the level he's played at, he's got to maintain that focus on how did he play well. It's offensive rebounding effort. It's physicality, cutting. It's finishing around the rim with force. I mean, to go 8 of 11 from the field and 7 of 8 from the foul line against that team with their size and length, that says he's doing some great things. A lot of times for guys, when they have success, they want to know what else can they do or what are the other things. Now, what's the next step? And to me, the next step is do it again and then do it again. And I feel like he's in a great headspace to keep doing that. And it's such a important part for us, especially as people switch screens and switch actions. It puts a 6'8" athletic guy cutting and on the glass against smaller guards, which gives us an advantage.
I think Mark is a guy that's gotten a lot of the credit for popularizing the no middle. Are they somebody you guys have stolen from, or you guys done that independently of what they've done?
Yeah, I mean, you certainly evaluate the league and look at why are people doing what they're doing. I think there's some differences in how they do it and how we do it based on they're probably more committed to keeping it, all the way on the side, picking it up higher and open the stance more on the wing to almost like entice you to drive the ball to the baseline and then bring the help. We're probably not quite as, I don't know what the word, extreme, liberal. They're really committed to doing it that way. They're more committed to switching everything on the ball, off the ball than we are, and probably more committed to switching ball screens with their fives. And again, they intentionally recruit 6'5", 6'6" guards and 6'8" bigs. So at all times you feel like, there's a, they have like-sized guys everywhere. So, studying the league and having familiarity with the league and coming in, you try to think about how can your team be successful. But there's, even though whether it's Texas or Tech or Baylor or us, teams that have more of that mindset or philosophy, for us, what we started with is how do we turn people over more? How do we speed people up more and feel like you have a better chance to do that making them play on the outside of the floor than through the middle? So certainly studied it, yet at the same time, Coach Adams has played his defense his way for a long time. There's certainly parallels, but a lot of differences too.
Hey, Coach. Tyrese obviously had a couple turnovers Saturday, but then seemed to bounce back late. A couple nice finishes around the rim, assists through tight windows. What have you liked kind of seeing from a playmaking aspect, and where do you hope to see progress throughout the conference season from him?
Yeah, well, Tyrese is, we need him to be a dynamic playmaker. We need him to be really aggressive. In transition, we want him to push it and try to, get downhill and make a play, but then also have the command to be able to get us into offense when something isn't to be there. And really the same thing when we're playing in pick and roll or when he has an opportunity to drive the basketball is we want him downhill more. We want him in the paint more. We want him attacking more. We want him playing with more of that speed and tenacity and burst that he has. And then at the same time, it's going right from that to possession manager to, okay, if I didn't get what I wanted, now how do we get to what's next? So I would say him knowing that the belief we have in him, the confidence, ability to play through mistakes, ability to learn on the job, certainly we've demonstrated that with him, and now it's continuing to see that growth and progress. And like I've said about Tyrese, and I'll say again, is he seems to have an uncanny ability to bounce back, whether it's in a game or after a play or on to the next thing. And so we just need to really maximize his ability to do that continuously throughout the game, so each play is independent of the last.